So here I am with Fran, and I will let her introduce herself. But talk about the universe. Just talk about things happening when they're meant to happen. And that's why we're here. So, whatever you're tuning in for about this video conversation, I'm sure you're in the right place because Fran and I are going to have a wonderful conversation. So, here's the thing. I connected with Fran on LinkedIn, thinking that I was connecting with someone I had never met before. We had a one-to-one video call, and she said, I bought your book. And I said, which one? And it was the very first book that I wrote. And she pulled it out, and it was actually signed by me in 2012, which means she was at one of my book signings. And I said to her, you know what? I feel like we need to get on a video call and see what's going to come up. And this is going to be the culmination of that. So welcome, Fran. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for having me. I was stoked. Like when you got in my inbox, I'm like, oh, Nancy Mueller, she's hit me up. Okay, all right, let's see what kind of conversation we're gonna have. I'm like, I have not. Well, you really didn't know me when you signed my book because you were giving a speech at that at the place that we were at, and I was just like, yo, this is like totally full circle.
So I have a question for you, but before I ask it, can you please tell everybody who you are, what you do, and why you're so fabulous?
Yeah. So my name is Fran. I am the author of a book called Can You Hear Me? And that started because of an argument with my 14-year-old. I told her to take out the trash, and then she basically said, well, why are you going to take it out? Because you're not.
So I think we're losing you a little bit. You're freezing up, but I'm sure you will be coming back.
Doing anything.
There
Can you hear me?
you were
Because it seems like I'm
frozen.
frozen.
You were frozen for a second. So please tell us
I'm
again.
back.
Yeah,
Okay.
about your book.
I'm just going to come out of freeze mode.
There you go.
So I mentioned earlier that my book was started from an argument with my 14-year-old. Well, my whole business started with with my 14-year-old an argument. And I told her to take out the trash, and then she told me, "Why don't you take it out yourself? Because you're not doing anything." And so I had this look on my face that I was wanting to really wring her neck. I did. I yelled at her. Well, I didn't wring her neck. I yelled at her. Um, and at the same time, I knew that I didn't want to really yell at her because I've already went down this road. I've already had these conversations where I'm yelling and they're not listening. And I was just getting to the space where I just couldn't take the routine anymore.
Hmm.
So after you keep doing things over and over again, at some point, hopefully we get tired of it. So I just so happened to be in therapy, and there was a book that was recommended to me by Marshall Rosenberg called Nonviolent Communication. And the whole purpose of going to therapy was to fix my kid. Come to find out, I was the one with the problem. After reading the book, I realized three things that I didn't know really how to communicate in a healthy way. And the second thing was I didn't know how to self-regulate my emotions or even have the capacity to identify what emotions were to say what it was that I was feeling. So I didn't know how to express myself. And then the third thing was, oh yeah, the first one was actually I didn't have any boundaries. And then the third thing was I didn't know how to um, accept responsibility for my actions. So I didn't know how to take accountability. But when I did start to implement those things, my relationship with my children, they began to heal. So that spawned off into me becoming a podcaster, which I started in April of this year. And then I also do public speaking, where people ask me to talk about vulnerability, um, self self reflection, in addition to how to communicate like with adult kids, because or well, she was a teenager at the time, but just how to communicate with your kids in a way where they can have the capacity to feel safe with you. And let me see what else. Um, oh, totally forgot about the decompression sessions. So from there, I had started something called decompression sessions. And what that is, I create a safe space for people to come and vent their frustrations. Because sometimes sharing with family and friends really isn't a safe space.
Yeah.
They take your information and they share it with others. And you know, that could really just create conflict in so many areas.
Yeah. And
So
distrust. Mhm.
yeah, yeah. So I think that's about it. And then the reason why that I think that I'm awesome is because I have seen the version that I was,
Mhm.
and then I know the version that I am now. And I'm so grateful that I took the time to work through a lot of those insecurities that I had to become this version now. Like I am so in love with this version. Like, so yeah.
That's the way, isn't it? It's like when you do the healing, when you take ownership and 100% responsibility for everything that is you.
Mhm.
I'm saying you, but of course I mean me, each of us individually. We are different people. We become different people. And the people who knew us back when, they really don't know us if they haven't stayed on the journey with us because they know who we were before the healing. They don't know who we are after the healing and with the tools of continual healing. And they don't even know what it would be like to interact with us in this healthier way.
Mm, that is so true. And I always like to now I like to make sure that I feel safe in the space versus how another person feels safe versus how they feel. Because for so long, I always worried about, okay, just make sure they feel comfortable, say something that um, will be nice and it won't be offensive. And I stopped doing that.
Yeah, because that's really a hyper vigilant way to live. And that is so nerve-wracking when you aren't sure if you're going to say the right thing, do the right thing. And so really you're not being your authentic you because you're trying to please someone else. And I know that from my own experience that as a mother, I mean, gosh, it was the most important thing to me. It's all I ever wanted growing up, to be a mom, to be a better mom than the mom I had, to love my daughters and to have this fantastic relationship with them where I would be with them every day and they would graduate from high school and college and they could stay living with me. Never leave home. You hear some parents say, "Oh my gosh, you can't wait until they move out," but I was just never like that. It's not that I never wanted them to leave. It's just that I truly enjoyed being with them. And you know, there comes a time when you realize like, okay, there is a letting go process. And if it's meant to be, it'll come back in a bigger and more fabulous way than it was before. And um, if we choose to do the healing for ourselves, when it does come back around, they may not even recognize who we are.
Mm-mm. I even had a conversation with my daughters because, like, my my oldest daughter, she said, "Oh, mom, when you said that you were changing, all we did was watch you because we thought you were being fake.
Mm,
And so she's like, yeah, we waited for a whole year for you to come, to come out of that behavior that you had. And then when you finally didn't change, that's when I began to ask myself, okay, I need to start looking at myself and see where I could become a better person. And for her to say that like that, whew, that was that's one of my kids where we clash so much because we are so much alike. But for her to tell me that really blessed me because like that just tells me how much work that I put in because unlike you, I didn't have a good relationship with my mother. So I didn't know what that felt like to have that motherly connection. And so when I had my kids, I was emotionally unavailable. Like I had them, I took care of them. They had food, they had a place to stay. And one thing that I said that I would never do is like I would move all over the place because I moved so much people thought I was in the military.
mm.
I went to 16 school districts. But when I had my kids, I've only moved like 3 times, and that was unheard of. So I wanted to create stability for them. I did physically, but mentally, I didn't.
Yeah, well, and
Yeah.
we only know what we know.
Right, right, right.
And when you say, unlike you, I didn't have a good relationship with my mother, the book that you purchased of mine, um, I wrote that book when I was going through my divorce of 32 years. So
Oh,
that's when my mother came into my life.
okay. I was referencing actually your relationship with your daughters.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Because it sound like you really had a good relationship with them.
Well, I think I was a fantastic mother, but you ask my daughters, maybe they think differently, because we all have different experiences. And, the thing though with my mother is she was pretty much absent my whole life, based on
Mm,
my traumatic childhood. And when I was going through my divorce, she lives in Ohio, I live in California. She called me one day and she's like, "Is it true what I hear that you're getting a divorce?" And I was like, "Oh, like, aren't I going through enough? Now I got to deal with you too."
mm.
And she said, I would really like to be there for you. I've never been there for you your whole life.
Wow.
I would really like to be there for you. But the thing is we don't know what to do with that, right? Because that's not how we see that person. Like, oh, great, you've never been there for me. Now you want to be there for me. What the heck does
Hmm.
that mean? So we can get something that we've always wished for, hoped for, desired, but just because we get it doesn't mean we know what to do with it.
How
And
did you navigate that?
well, what was interesting is for her being there for me just kind of pretty much for I don't know, a few months was call me during the day and go, "You all right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm all right." "All right, good. I'm just checking on you." So, but then, she started following me on social media. And one day on our call, she's like, "I see what you're doing with all these women. Do you think that what you're doing for them would work for us?" And after I picked myself up off the floor, I was like, well, yeah, because it works. But it's not like I took my mom on as a client. I just said, all right, so here's how I think it would work best. Just ask me whatever you want to ask me, and we'll have conversations. And if the conversations get heated, we'll just agree that, okay, time to go. And so we started communicating differently. And that on top of, following me, stalking me, I guess, on social media, she was like, whoa. And then, at one point she said to me, I never knew you were so brilliant. She said, when you were little, you tried to tell me things and I didn't know what to do with you. She's like, I just ignored you. And when that didn't work, she's like, I just beat it out of you. And when that didn't work, I just like left you on your own. And I'm like, what could I possibly have said as a child, that you would just not know what to do with me? But
Wow.
we have to remember that it doesn't have anything to do with us.
Hmm.
It's about the journey of the other person.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm,
and when we give people that room to grow, that space to grow, that I was going to say permission to grow, but it's not up to us to give anyone permission for anything. I think it's when we give ourselves permission to grow. Yeah.
totally believe that. I
And
totally believe that.
what you did with your daughters, you broke the cycle. And now, when your daughters become mothers, should they choose to become mothers, or however they're going to interact, it's going to be completely different than it was the way they were impacted by you. I'll just say 1.0 Fran as opposed to 2.0 Fran, 1.0 Nancy as opposed to 2.0 Nancy. Yeah.
Totally, totally. I mean, even now, like during different stages of my life, I was behaving in a certain way with my first son. With my son, he got all of the brunts of the rough version of myself. And then in the middle, uh, I'm transitioning out of this rough version. And then the third one is where I'm in my healing space. And you could see with my kids, like they all have like this way that they approach life because of how I had reared them in those stages. And my most stable kid is my last one. She's very, very like even keel. She has this really vivaciousness about life, and the other two are like very suspicious about. I don't know about you, why you're doing what you're doing, but I'm really grateful that they got to see that because when they seen this version, um, I was able to have different conversations with them because then I could now confess the things and admit to the faults that I created in that space.
Mhm.
Am I going to take that guilt? No, because I didn't know any better in that
Right,
space and I
right.
couldn't do any better. We're only limited to the information, like you said earlier, that we know at that time.
It's interesting. I think about this quite often when I was raising my daughters, when I would think, because I really wanted there to be open lines of communication. I wanted them to know I had their back. They could come to me for anything. I mean, that was really important to me. So there were times when things would come up and I would say, okay, now everybody sit down and we're going to talk about this. And of course, they're sitting there like, and I'm like, no, I really want to know, like, what do you think? And I don't know if how long it went on, an hour, 2 hours, half hour, who knows? But I'm thinking that must have been really excruciating for them. But on the other hand, it's what makes me so good at what I do in my business and working with clients because I have that, okay, let's pull it out, let's see. But of course, those are people who come to me because they want to do that, not, teenagers who are like, do we really have to go over this again? And it's interesting though, because when you look back, you can see like, whoa, I didn't notice or pay attention or even consider that that could be um, something that would is going to make me really good at what I do, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever. And so, it's like we have this innate talent, gift, um, passion within us. And once we step into that, I'm done with doing it this way. I'm going to heal myself. I'm going to do the inner work. I'm going to do the personal transformation,
Yeah.
the personal development, and see what comes out of it from there. And I don't think any of us go into that with, oh, I want to see what kind of person I'm going to be. I think we really just get to a point where we've hit that dark night of the soul and we just can't take it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the couple of things that I feel I've taken from this journey is that to be okay with other people feeling uncomfortable around you
Yeah.
and to be okay with yourself feeling not okay sometimes. Like, for example, earlier this week, I started work at a new place. And I do have my decompression sessions, but I also have a job that I started. And the second day, I felt really overwhelmed. I felt like I didn't know what the heck was going on because I know this job was for me because I took this journey with this book called The Artist's Way,
Oh,
and it's a 12-week book.
mhm.
And so before I started The Artist's Way, I said to the universe, I don't want to work until I'm done. And The Artist's Way takes 3 months, 12 weeks, 3 months to finish. I did not work for 3 months. On the day that I finish my last journal entry, guess who gets an email for a job offer?
Mhm. Yep.
This girl. So I was like, okay, I know this is the universe.
Yeah.
But like when the first day I went in and I just went very casual because I thought I was just going to go fill out papers. And then I did. And he was like, oh, are you ready to work? And I'm like, yeah, sure. But totally clothes inappropriate. I'm like, whatever. I'm just gonna go. Just call whatever, friend. The second day I come in, like, you got this, you got this. Like I'm it's a project manager job. I've done this job my whole life. Being that I've been out of the sign industry for almost like 4 years, I'm like, oh shoot, I'm trying to catch up with terminology, and it really felt overwhelming because I just had this list of stuff that I'm just trying to figure out in this space. And I'm like, when I went home that night, I was crying because I was like, one, I don't like clocking in. Two, I don't like my time being managed like that. And then the third one is like, okay, how is it that I'm feeling about this space? Do I really like this? Is this what I want to do? And I just allowed myself to say, ugh, I hate this place. So I just did that right there and then. And then I called up one of my friends. Yes, I complained to her about it. And then after I hung up with her, I had, I, I went to go journal and then I went to the beach to go walk. And I realized as I did those things to help myself regulate, that I was putting too much pressure on myself.
Yeah.
And so I said, Fran, it's really your first full day, girl. You don't know any of these processes that they got going on here. You are playing catch up. These were somebody else's projects that you basically have to go in and be a puzzle finder for.
Mhm.
So give yourself some grace and compassion.
Yeah.
And so I did that. And then the next day, when I felt a little bit overwhelmed, I was like, hey, friend, chill. You got this, girl. Remember, you just started. So as I did that process, like I really loved on myself. I loved on myself. So having that compassion while you're going through that journey, even if you don't like it, but to allow yourself the opportunity to voice it out because your body needs that expression.
Exactly. Our emotions, everything is energy, and emotions are energy in motion. So when you've got emotions coming up, if you don't allow yourself to express them,
Hmm.
they're going to like, you know, get denser and denser. And then it
Yeah.
comes out in like, I don't know, sometimes disease of the body or, you know, just
In different
heavy in
ways.
the mind. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
so important. I think one of the most loving things we can do for ourselves is um, know how we're feeling at all times. If we're
Hmm.
in a powerful state of being or a primal state of being. A
Yeah.
primal state of being, being what we would call negative, like fight, flight, or fright, like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling shameful, I'm feeling guilty, I'm feeling, so when you're feeling overwhelmed or stressed out, you're in a very primal state of being. And so when just knowing that, like, okay, I'm feeling in a very primal state of being, what can I do, in your words, to say self-regulate and shift into a more powerful state of being? It's one of
Yeah.
the best things we can do for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
You mentioned when we talked the other day, and you mentioned, you said, well, I bought your book, and you said that my book was the first time you had ever heard being able to talk about the things I talked about. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Yeah. I didn't know how to be vulnerable. And when I read all the things that you experienced, that really resonated with me because I never had seen on paper somebody really talk about what goes behind closed doors. Maybe that's because I was just being first introduced to the world of reading as an adult, or I don't know, it just resonated with maybe that's just what I needed to see at that time.
Mhm.
And so when I saw the words of all the things that you experience in your family, I was like, oh, shoot, she's just a version of myself. And I just couldn't believe it because like the reason why it was amazing to me because in my culture, we don't really have this conversation about being vulnerable. We don't talk about things that go on behind closed doors. Everything is always a cover up of something. And so seeing your words made me feel seen. It made me feel seen. Of course, not heard, but that was my journey. You made me feel seen. Now the next journey was for me to see myself and hear myself. But that would go over a long period of time.
And I know that's what um, really caught my eye when I saw your bio in LinkedIn. I said, because you talk about you help people share their voice. And I said, oh, this is someone that I need to talk to. It was like this big lightning bolt, thunderbolt from the universe. I'm like, okay, I got it. I'm gonna reach out to her and see where this goes. And it's when you're saying that, it was interesting to me because at the time, I happened to be a professional tour guide and I was doing a tour bus from Orange County to Las Vegas. And there was this guy on my bus, and I had just gotten my book. I was so excited, and I was going to read it on the bus on some downtime. And there was a guy who was really kind of good, big and tall and well built and everything. And he was sitting like one row back and over here. And he, leaned forward and he tapped me on the shoulder because as I'm reading the book, I guess he could see that my picture was on the back. And he goes, "Is that your book?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah, it is. I just got this. I'm really excited." And he's like, "Do you mind if I take a look?" And so I said, "No, of course not." So it's a 4-hour trip to Las Vegas. And so we're on the bus and I like keep looking over because I thought he was just gonna like thumb through it or whatever, but he got full into reading it and he was all like hunched over and his back was to me. So it wasn't his body language wasn't so I could like, "Are you finished yet?" And so I
Hmm.
just let him go. And when we got to Vegas and we got off the bus, he handed me my book and he said, "I want to tell you something." And it comes to find out that, I just preface this with, I know nothing about sports, especially football. So I guess he was a pro football player
Hmm.
and he was supposed to drive to Vegas, but something happened to his car. And he said, "I was supposed to drive to Vegas, but something happened to my car. It's in the shop. So I had to take this bus that you're on." And he said, "I was supposed to be on your bus today." He said, "Because I have to tell you, I haven't read a book in years." And he said, "Your book is exactly what I needed to hear at this time."
Amazing.
And, it's so interesting because we just never know when we share our story who needs to hear it, number one, um, how it's going to have a ripple effect. I had another woman in Africa who reached out to me, and she couldn't get my book because she couldn't get on Amazon. So I mailed her a copy, and we had some video conversations after that. And she said, "I thought that things that happened to you in your childhood only happened to women of my village. I
Mm.
didn't know that those kinds of things happen to women outside of my village." And
Wow.
it's so interesting how we can bring unity to women everywhere. And it's not to exclude men. I'm just saying that, when women rise together, we all benefit.
Yeah.
And when this is a time, like, I really want to stress, I really want to encourage, I really want to invite women that if there's something that you're holding on to, please find someone to talk to. My latest book that I published this year is called Secrets in the Attic. And the attic is like an analogy of the mind, because an attic is where you can put things, store things, and you don't look at them. The mind is like, that's where your memory is. And sometimes we think about memory, sometimes we don't. And so that's where that all came about with that book. But so many of us have been taught to keep secrets. And because of those secrets, we are weighed down in mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah.
And this is time for the divine feminine to stand up and stand in our power and say, we are here and we are really going to make a difference. And the Dalai Lama said that Western women will change the world.
Mm.
However, women can't change the world if every woman is unwilling to work on herself, to be 100% responsible for, if she's holding a grudge against this person or still angry about something else or not getting along with someone or her life isn't going the way she wants it to go. It's all internal. Everything is an inside job. And I really do. I'm so glad that I connected with you and that you and I have had this conversation. And I feel like there's something big in the works. And, I can you please share the name of your podcast? I've been listening to
Yep.
some of the sessions. So share your
Yep.
podcast.
Yep. So the name of my podcast is called Fran and Friends. And the motto of the podcast is finding healing through self-discovery. And obviously, everything we've talked about is definitely that because I enjoy engaging with conversations such as people like Nancy, because stories do change lives.
Mm.
People that approach healing from a different perspective, either whether it's Eastern medicine or some type of somatic therapy, some kind of natural homeopathic modality. Like, I love those kinds of things because I feel like nature really has a lot of the answers that we're looking for, and nature is trying to reflect the peace that we can gain if we are still in a space. So,
And
yeah,
it's time for us to really understand our boundaries. And it's time for us to realize that, when we've been putting ourselves on the back burner or keeping quiet about something, and we keep putting ourselves in last place, it's time for us to realize that we are really doing ourselves a disservice. Because if we
totally.
think that we're, oh, I'm taking care of others before myself, they don't know we're doing that. All they know is that they're getting what they want, and then they don't really even realize that the relationship isn't reciprocal. And it's so important for women now. And I say now, 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 because there is no other time except now. You can say yesterday. Well, when you're thinking of yesterday, yeah, but you're thinking about it right now. So it's right now. And now is the perfect time for us to all stand in our power. And if we don't know what that means, reach out to people like Fran and myself and say, I want to be heard. I want to speak. I have something to say. And whether you say it out loud, like on a platform of social media, or you say it one-to-one to another person, or you take a selfie video and say, you know what, I just have to get this out of me.
Mm,
We deserve to have our voices heard, even
absolutely.
even if our voice shakes.
Yeah. You guys have seen how many times I've tried to figure out what word to use, but it's okay with me. I enjoy these kind of moments because they remind me of my humanity and that nothing is really like a straight line. That's man-made. Anything that's straight is man-made,
Yeah,
but life really goes like this. I
yeah.
mean, think about it when you're walking on a sidewalk and you see a tree, you know? Of course, they didn't quote unquote plan for it, but the universe has just a way of showing up because you needed that kind of push or triggering or break. Like the
Yeah,
universe loves to support us, even when we don't want to be supported.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
if you need to be triggered for you to address that feeling of feeling rejected, you will continually be put in a space where you're going to feel rejected until you have the strength enough to address that issue, to
yeah,
address whatever it is. And it's not that there's something wrong with you. There is a strength that the universe is trying to help you identify through the people that are creating helping create that space of growth.
absolutely. When we stand in our power, it's the most loving thing we can do for ourselves.
Totally. I witnessed that so much today at not just this week with the new job. Um it's like everything that I asked for I was given. Prior to that, like I would always look at an owner of the company as if somebody I couldn't really approach because of my own insecurities.
Mhm.
But because I've already worked through them and realized that this guy here puts his pants on the same way that I do, and that is just a conversation I'm having with another being.
Yeah,
And because I now walk in my sovereignty, he can treat me with that same kind of energy.
absolutely. Standing in your power. So beautiful.
Yes,
Fran, thank
confidence
you
looks
so
good on
much.
y'all.
Thank you for agreeing to have this conversation. And I'm pleased, all of you who are watching this, um, leave some comments because you
Yeah,
just never know what our conversation sparks. And if it sparks something in you and you leave a comment, your comment could spark a conversation or a thought in someone else. And this becomes a ripple effect. So please leave some comments. Let us know what you think. And our information will be in the description. If you have any questions, reach out to either of us. And in the meantime, man, party like purple. Love your life.
right. Bye, y'all. Thank you for having me, Nancy.
Yeah, ciao, Fran.
Bye.